Welcome back, y'all, and happy Friday. This is the Bluechip Breakdown, and I'm your host, Bull. Today, we're going to be breaking down Nick Saban's new role in college sports. It's something that we joked about yesterday on our live stream. I had not seen this stuff. Well, I saw some things that was floating around out there. I had no idea that it was serious. So whenever I was talking about it, I was joking. Now, my take on it, I was very serious. I don't think that this is a good idea. I think it's going to be bad for college sports. That's my take. That's my stance. I'm going to be breaking down why I see it that way as we're going throughout this video. But as we're doing it, I would love to hear y'all's thoughts. Do you think this is going to be good or bad for college sports? And as always, y'all, please do make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. We're going to be listening to some of the things that Saban has said about college sports, NIL, all that good stuff, and just get a feel for what his mindset is and all of that. So first, we do have a couple of quick notes for me to get to with our basketball team. We were looking at the transfer guard from Oklahoma, Duke Miles. Tennessee's no longer doing that. Now, we still do need a guard, I think. I don't know who we're going after. It doesn't feel like there's some short list or anything like that. It feels like it's just about Jordan Gainey. If we can get that fifth year at the NCAA grants that, then it's going to be Jordan Gainey. Now, he's perfect for me because we've seen how he plays. I think that he has good size. He can score on all three levels. Really picked it up, towards the end of last season. So adding him would be huge, but we just don't know how that's going to play out. The next thing that I want to talk about is right here. This is Tennessee's contract with Nike that is set to expire. I think maybe once school is over with this year. So coming up in maybe like a week or two, I think that this is going to be done. But I don't know if this is the real contract or not. It actually looks real. So I don't know how they were able to get their hands on this information. Maybe it's something that's public. Either way, y'all can see how these contracts look. You know how the contract looked with Nike. The money that you're seeing here, 3.6 million for their second year of this contract, all the way down to what they're saying, 2025 to 2026. That's why I'm not quite sure on, if this deal is gonna, continue all the way through this upcoming year or what. But y'all can see in that year is $4.5 million. Now that's the money that's allocated to the, clothes and things like that. I guess jerseys, everything that the entire school gets, like for all sports, because Tennessee, we are consistent with our sponsors. So if the football team gets Nike, the women's basketball team gets Nike, and so on and so forth. With some programs, they don't do that. Like I've seen it where the football team might be sponsored by Nike, and the women's basketball team is sponsored by somebody else, or the basketball team is sponsored by somebody else. But either way, that's a lot of money. And Nike was good. I mean, obviously, Nike makes really nice stuff. I think that the jerseys look good. I think that for us as fans, we want to be able to find some nice stuff for us to wear to these games and to wear out, to watch the games on TV or whatever. So, that's a good look. It doesn't sound like we're gonna go back to Nike though. It sounds like that's over with for whatever reason. This is why I thought maybe this is real. Maybe some of y'all know if these signatures are the real signatures. Either way, y'all can see how that contract looked. But I have one option. There is only one option for me. I've talked about this before. It is definitely Jordan. So you see that obviously Nike and Jordan is kind of like the same deal, but they're separate some type of way. I don't know how all that works, but teams like Florida, teams like Oklahoma, obviously, UNC, where Jordan went to school at, you can actually see a good list over there on the left, Michigan too. So I think that Jordan is the answer. You know what I mean? Because it's not so much about what we want as fans. It's more about what are the players like? What do they want to be playing in? What do they want to wear on an all-the-time basis? Because they get so many free clothes. Like we looked at all the money that's allocated to the players getting this, and obviously coaches and all of that type of stuff too. But everybody wants Jordan. Jordan is really high quality stuff, just relatively speaking. So this would be my option, right? Like whenever these kids are looking at schools, especially the kids that have multiple options, where, hey, man, there's a lot of boxes being checked off here. This is just one more box that Tennessee can check off to give us an upper hand on some of these other programs. And, man, I'm going to tell you, obviously, Florida's always tough. We're going back and forth with Florida. We've lost some players to Florida. I think that they've lost a couple to us as well. But Michigan, too. Michigan's coming up. So they're sponsored by Jordan. This is just one thing that we can check off if, it's maybe like a deal breaker or whatever. It's not always like that with every single player, but for some players, it will be. But what I can guarantee you is that for probably over 90% of these players, they want to be sponsored by Jordan. They want to be able to get all those retro Jordans. And I've watched I watched kind of like a vlog with a player that I think he was at Oklahoma. It was really good. I watched a couple of his episodes, but he was going through and one of them talking about how they're sponsored by Jordan. They get as many Jordans as they want, and they had like a little case of all these different retro Jordans. And I love shoes, so I was like, dude, that would be enough for me to want to go there. But I think that they have to be your team's colors either way. Just think about getting some orange and white Jordans. You know what I'm saying? Some orange and white retro Jordans to wear with your jersey. That would look good for us as fans. But again, the biggest thing is, what do the players think about it? They want Jordan. So that's where we need to go. Maybe as a fan base, we can get on social media and just talk about that. Like, hey, we want Jordan. We want Jordan. Because if we go to some of these other, like, I don't want Under Armour, honestly. Under Armour, I think they've gotten better with their cleats. But when I was in high school, I had some Under Armour cleats. They were super heavy. It slows you down. That's something else. Jordan's football cleats, baseball cleats, all of that. Like, we've seen some of our baseball players wearing Jordan cleats, but they are. It was Jordan cleats. It was the Nike. It was the Jordan ones, which is technically Nike. It's got the Nike swoop on it, but it's still a Jordan. So either way, though, man, I'm telling you, they make comfortable stuff. They make. You talk about the basketball team. Obviously, Jordans make, to me, the best basketball shoes. Now, these kids might not like them as much as they used to back in the day, but they're solid. I think that they're flexible. They're not overly heavy, most of them anyway. So you can jump high in them. You can run fast in them. They're going to hold up. A lot of them are going to be high tops. So it's good for your ankles and things like that. I just think from top to bottom, Jordan is the answer. So we'll see how that whole thing plays out, man. Again, I'm going to keep a very close eye on it and see, is this going to change for this upcoming season, or is it for next year? Either way, I think that is what Tennessee wants to do. Or, at least for me, this is what I think Tennessee should do. So now let's talk about Saban, right? This right here is an article from On3, and it's written by Nick Schultz. And you can see up at the top, it says Nick Saban expected to co-chair President Donald Trump Commission on College Sports. So, like I said, man, I thought that all this stuff was a joke, but it is serious. So we're going to scroll through, and I'm just going to highlight a couple of things from this article. I'm not going to read the whole thing. But right here in this first paragraph, what was interesting to me is that we know that obviously Nick Saban is the co-chair. Who's the other co-chair? It says right here that it's a well-known college athletics booster. So looking at that right there, okay, just to start it off, this is a joke, right? Like, why would you put a guy of Nick Saban's status, who is the greatest college football coach of all time? So I think that it does qualify him to maybe be on a board with several other people to vote on this to try to figure out what's actually going on. But what they do is they go and get a big money person, which I guess that's why whoever this guy is, I guess that's why he's there. Obviously, talking about NIL, you can get the coaches side of it, and then you can get the booster side of it. But it's just coming from two different people. I don't think that there are enough minds. And we all know that this guy, whoever this person is, they're not going to sit down at a table with Coach Saban and tell him what to do. Like, he's probably not going to change Saban's mind, Saban's stance. And that's what the issue is. If this was me doing this, I would have gone out and said, hey, listen, I'm gonna put Saban up here along with someone else. I threw out Jimmy Johnson yesterday. I think that Jimmy Johnson would be perfect because he hasn't had to come up in this age of NIL, but he knows college football, right? He knows college football. He knows pro football, so he knows the contract side of it. He knows college football prior to NIL, and then he knows pro football with how those contracts work. So he can bring it together, I think. And because he hasn't coached in such a long time, he's not going to be necessarily tied to any one institution. So that was my biggest thing to kind of start off yesterday was, dude, as a Tennessee fan, why in the hell would I want somebody who is so closely tied to the University of Alabama to be over all of college sports? Because this isn't just about football, this is about all of college sports. So those are some of my early grievances. But let's scroll on down and let's talk about what they're actually going to be doing. So as we touched on, they will be looking at NIL. We know where Nick Saban's stance is on NIL. We're going to take a look at that here in just a minute. But they're going to be looking at NIL, finding ways to, I guess, make that work better for everybody. And they're also going to be looking at Title IX. So Title IX is something that definitely needs to get fixed, or I think it probably does need to get fixed. Now, I don't have I have limited knowledge on exactly what Title IX means, but my understanding is everything needs to be equal for all of college sports and all of, I guess, college everything. Maybe it's not just sports. So women's and men's, they have to have equal everything. Now, where this gets a little bit muddied at to me is that if you look at something like revenue sharing, where we know that the football team is going to generate most of the revenue. So, like, let's just say if Tennessee's football team made, or I'm sorry, if Tennessee's, if Tennessee as a school last season made $200 million, probably 150 million or more of that money came from the football team. But then if you look at our softball team, they were losing money. But you can say the same thing about the baseball team. I'm not picking on softball. I'm not picking on the women's sports. But I'm just saying, if you look at it realistically speaking, how can you justify hey, we're going to split up all the money that just two teams made because it was just the football team and the basketball team that made all the money. So, we're going to take all the money that they made and split that up amongst all other sports. That's going to be a little bit tricky in this whole situation. I have a very easy answer to this, and we'll get to that in just a minute. They're also going to be looking at the transfer portal. That's something I've been very vocal about. That does need to get fixed some type of a way. You got to find a way to slow that down. That's the real issue with college sports, as far as I'm concerned. So, going to be looking at that. And then they're also going to look and see, should the players actually be employed by these institutions? Now, that is the fix. That's the only fix, because everything that we just talked about, it's not gonna, you can always have lawsuits. Like, the lawsuits will come because it's against our constitution. It's it's against the law, right? So even if they can get some of this stuff passed, it's only gonna last for so long, right? Like, it's only gonna last until, I would say, for the next 3.5 years, because once a new crew gets in there, they're going to wash all this stuff away because it's unconstitutional. So I just think that if you look at the premise of this whole deal, it's probably not going to, especially if they're, really making moves, it's probably not going to be the most beneficial thing. Something else that we can talk about, and I'm gonna pull this up for y'all real quick as well. I'm gonna show you this here. Just talking about how much money the SEC is made last season and the Big Ten made last season, just so that everyone understands that there is a lot of money to go around. Because I've seen too many folks talking about, well, the players just don't, they're not worth this much money, billions of dollars. The SEC, okay, signed a contract with Disney, or Disney or ESPN and ESPN whatever, for $3 billion over 10 years. The Big Ten signs a contract for $8 billion over 7 years. So this is $1 billion industry, made off of the pretty much players' hard work. Now, yes, the coaches have to work too. That's why they're getting paid. That's why they've been getting paid. But the actual, on the field, on the court, whatever stuff, that is coming from the players. So yes, of course they deserve to get paid, and it's foolish to ever say that they don't. So that's the first part that I wanted to just take a look at here briefly. And I would also like to get into some of the stuff that Nick Saban has said here previously. And let's see what his stance is, right? Let's see how much has his stance kind of changed over some of these years and all of that good stuff, and see if we can't figure out exactly where Saban's at on this stuff. So we're gonna start off right here with this little clip. This is when Nick Saban was talking to Congress. And, something else too that I haven't touched on just yet, but we do know that the House settlement is probably, they're probably going to get that whole thing squared away coming up next week. I think that the judge gave the lawyers maybe until next Wednesday, something like that, to get the language fixed inside of the, not well, yeah, I guess contracts and all of that, to make sure that we can grandfather in players and that there's not these roster limits. Is what the judge didn't like. So that's about to get implemented. That's something that every institution has been getting ready for a long time, because we knew how this was going to look. So everyone's changed things, and the states are making different laws and all that good stuff to try to get ready for what's coming. So if Nick Saban and his whole bunch come in and say, well, y'all got this changed, which they're saying that it could take Saban and them a few months to get figured out what they want to do. But if we have something that comes from this House settlement, and then we have to change it again based off of what Saban wants, I think that that's a really big problem by itself as well. So we're going to listen to what Coach Saban said. Just a small little clip here from what he had to say whenever he met with Congress. I think most of us heard this, but let's listen, and then we're going to give our thoughts on it.
All the things that I believed in for all these years, 50 years of coaching, no longer exist in college athletics. So it's always was about developing players. It was always about helping people be more successful in life. My wife even said to me, we'd have all the recruits over on Sunday with their parents for breakfast. And she would always meet with the mothers and talk about how she was going to help and impact their sons and how they would be well taken care of. And she came to me, like right before I retired and said, why are we doing this? And I said, what do you mean? She said, all they care about is how much you're going to pay them. They don't care about how you're going to develop them, which is all what we've always done. So why are we doing this?
So, there you have it, right? There's a couple of things that I took away from that. So the first part of it is listening to, I guess, just the simple fact that, like most of us talked about yesterday, and like most of us already knew, Nick Saban stopped coaching basically because of NIL. So I listened to him on the Pivot podcast. I think that this was last week, and the same thing that he's talking about with his wife. He touched on it there too, and that's a really good, like, y'all should go and check that out. But just kind of like listening to his thoughts on that. Basically what he said was that his wife is very hands-on, which I think that that's beautiful. Yeah, I think that that's great. She's very hands-on with what Saban does, and she loves to get to know these players, get to know their family members and all of that. And I don't know what else she does. I mean, I don't know if that's it, if hey, I'm helping my husband out with all this stuff. But what it feels like for me is that they said, okay, well, now that it's more about the actual NIL, it's about this money. We can't hold on to these players, and I, basically like miss these players. I miss their parents, and I don't want to do this anymore. Like that's kind of what I took from it, whether that's right or wrong. But also, you have to think about it, right? Like, let's just be real. Let's call it like it is. Saban in Alabama, they had those players driving Challengers, driving Chargers, and that was, that was a big deal for them because nobody else was able to figure out how to do it legally. Now, somehow, some way, they were doing that legally. It wasn't just that, but like we all know that some of those players were getting paid under the under the table. So obviously, they had this leg up over every other program, and it was cool then. That was perfectly fine. But now, they're saying, well, these players care too much about money, so they don't care about getting to know us, and they don't care about being better people. Listen, making money is not going to stop you from being a good person. If you're not a good person, you're not going to be a good person with or without that money. And if they didn't vibe well with those, with Nick Saban and with his wife, them get more money, that's not going to make them vibe well with you, or vice versa. If they did vibe well with you, them get more money is not going to stop them from vibing well with you, right? Like y'all can still be friends. That's why I don't like this whole thing to me. It's kind of a joke, and I totally disagree with the premise of some of the things that Saban is saying here. Well, really not with some of them. I would say with really all of them. It doesn't make very much sense to me. So what we're gonna do, y'all, is we're going to listen to another clip that he had, and this one is going to be with College Game Day. So I'm going to pull that up because I think that this one's good too. Like this one is going to shed some more light as well on exactly what I would say that Nick Saban thinks on what some of these other people are thinking that are maybe close to Saban and all of that. So the first part of it is whenever Saban stopped coaching, let's keep in mind he was totally against NIL, totally. Now, by the time that he was talking to Congress, with which what we just looked at, by the time he was talking to Congress there, I think that he might have changed his stance just a little bit. Where okay, and I shouldn't have said NIL. He still doesn't. I don't think likes NIL, but he didn't want the players to get paid. Period. Like honestly speaking, he did not want them to get paid at first. But then I think that he realized, well, damn, I am making all this money. I'm sure that somebody probably sat him down and told him, like, Coach, you've been making tens of millions of dollars year over year over year for close to like 2 decades off the backs of players that are not making a dime. Like I think that the players started to get this small little stipend. You know what I'm saying? And that little stipend was, well, it was something like $300, $400 a week. And all you could do with that was go and get some food off campus. You know what I'm saying? Like it was very, very minor. It was not worth the work that they were putting in, not in a $1 billion industry. Not when the head coach is making tens of millions of dollars, right? So that was a bad look, and there's a word for it that I don't even want to say. So for me, I really I look at Saban. I think that he's a great coach, but as a person, I know that I wouldn't vibe well with him because of his mindset. Like, how dare you stand up here after you made all this money and say that the players can't make money and say that, oh, all of a sudden this is a hindrance to them being better people and all of that good stuff. But anyway, we're going to listen to some of the things that Saban had to say here. I'm going to stop it wherever I need to stop it at. And y'all as well, man, put your comments in here. So this is again with College Game Day. They're going to be talking about the Matthew Sluka thing. Remember that he was um, promised like $100,000 that he didn't get. So I do not, I do not condone quitting on your team, which is what he did. But at the same time, I think that we all know that if you work at your job for 2 weeks, it's time for you to get paid, and you don't get paid, or you're getting paid significantly less than what you were told you were going to get paid. That's a problem. You're going to have a problem with your job. It's the same thing here. The players are getting paid, so they will have an issue whenever the contracts fall through, right? Like whenever the checks start to bounce. Now, it could have been a situation where maybe Matthew Sluka's agent didn't read the fine print inside of his contract, right? So maybe there was something that he was supposed to do that he didn't do. So that's why he didn't get paid. Either way, we're going to listen to what they had to say about it. And keep in mind that most of the people that are sitting up here, they're speaking down on Matthew Sluka. Again, the mindset is a problem for me. So I'm gonna go and let this thing roll.
So you just walked away from this world where the NIL has changed and players are recruited differently. What's your reaction to this? A quarterback leaving an undefeated team?
Well, first of all, we don't have a manageable system in college football. I'm not opposed at all to players making money. In fact, I think they deserve that. But
100%.
the way we're giving the money now, name, image, and likeness is really not name, image, and likeness. That's supposed to be for a marketing opportunity, which I think is a good thing. But we've turned it into pay for play because we have donor raised funds to be able to pay people. So that system does not create value long term for players. You're supposed to go to college to create value for your future. Now we have guys making decisions about how much money they're going to make.
Okay, so I'm gonna pause it there. So, like we said, at this point, Saban's on TV now, right? And so obviously, I think that he got a lot of pushback from the things that he was saying because he made so much money. So now he has to say, yeah, I think that the players, should get paid. But he's saying, well, but it shouldn't be pay for play. It should really be about, hey, you got a real deal from a Coca-Cola just because they could market you, right? Like he's saying things like that. And for some reason, if you get the money and it's pay for play, that's a hindrance to your education and to you growing as a good person, as opposed to if you get it from from a Coca-Cola, right? What is the difference? That's my question. What is the difference? And also, again, he made plenty of money, not just from Alabama, but also because from Geico and from everyone else that he gets these ads with. So why is it okay for him to do it? Is it because he's not in college? Well, what difference does that make, right? Like there's a lot of players or there's a lot of students that are in college that are making money, that are getting paid, that don't play sports. And some of them are making really, really good money. You know what I'm saying? Especially these days. They found a way to make it. That's the system that this country is, right? Like this is a capitalist system. So there is nothing about the way that the players are getting paid that's gonna make them bad people. That's gonna hinder them from getting an education and all those types of things. Now, I think that maybe what he's trying to say here is, well, they are, looking to go to these schools based off of which one's going to pay them the most money. I don't know if Nick Saban knew this, but hey, Alabama's not the only place that's offering bachelors and masters, and there's a lot of other programs, right? Like just talking about football, or just talking about D1. There's 133 of them, so there's 132 more than just Alabama, and most of those institutions are probably going to be better as far as the education that the players will be getting. So it's just a joke. And every time I hear people making these arguments that don't make any logical sense, and he's about to contradict himself here too in just a minute. Like whenever they make all these, arguments that are, they're going against what they just said, it lets me know that they're not coming from a good place, and that they don't like. There's no sense. There's no real logic. There's something that they're probably hiding that they're not telling us because what they're saying doesn't make sense. So I'm going to let him finish this thought, and then we're going to stop it again.
Which I'm not sure that's what we want the college experience to be. So I think there can be a revenue share type of program in the future that would enhance the players' quality of life while they're going to school. They would be able to make money and they would still have name, image, and likeness opportunities that were legitimate marketing opportunities. And I think that this is a situation where you're going to see more consequences like this in the future. Guys get in the portal, they don't get an opportunity, they lose their scholarship. And then guys don't get what they're promised. And the players don't really have any protection from agents that they should have.
All right, so I'm gonna stop it right here. So he talks about, listen, NIL needs to be, real deals that are coming from these big corporations and things like that. But then, he goes on to say, but I think that we should have revenue sharing. Again, what is the difference? Like people throw this phrase out there, this pay for play phrase, which the players, whether it's NIL, okay, coming from the big time boosters and donors, or whether it's coming from a Coca-Cola, or whether it's revenue sharing, what are the players getting paid for? They're getting paid to play. Like that is the reason that they're making the money. So I just it's not a very good argument to me. It doesn't make any sense. It really, really, really doesn't. It shouldn't matter how they're getting paid. But let's talk about it, right? Just because with everything that's going on with this house settlement, we know that a lot of the things that a lot of the things that are getting brought up that the NCAA keeps on losing with in court are the antitrust laws. So with the antitrust laws, the first big thing, the reason that the players are able to start making money was because you cannot limit how much money a person makes off of their name, image, and likeness, which is why it started off with name, image, and likeness. You know what I'm saying? And we all knew that it was going to turn into this pay for play model where, these student athletes are now getting paid by these big boosters and donors. But who's to say, like, what's the difference if it's a big brand name or if it's, hey, I want this player to sign a bunch of autographs and I want to pay him a bunch of money for it because, he's this is how much I value his name, image, and likeness. It doesn't matter, right? Like that is never going to stick anywhere at all. But keep in mind now, whenever this stuff first started, this thought of revenue sharing was thrown out there very early on. Guys like Nick Saban, guys like Kirk Herbstreit, some of the other guys sitting up there, and many, many others. They were so against this revenue sharing. They said, "Oh no, that's going to be the death of college sports. We just can't do that." But now, all of a sudden, we're looking at it and we're saying, "Yeah, we would rather do the revenue sharing thing." So the issue here is really that there's people who are too set in their ways. They do not want to see change. And what they're doing is they're holding on to this rope really, really tight. The tighter that they hold on to it, the more that they're burning off the skin on their own hands and the other people who are holding on to his hands, right? Like at some point, you have to let go and let this stuff get fixed. It's not going to, we're only making it worse by keep on trying to, oh, well, let's take away this, but we can do it this way. Like we're trying to find every other way to make this thing work except doing it the correct way, which we're about to get to what that is here in just a minute. Now, Saban does, I think that he's got some pretty good points about, these agents and things like that. I think that he'll talk more on the agent portion of it. But yeah, I think that the agent thing can be a little bit of an issue. So we'll let them kind of finish up with some of their thoughts, and then we're going to stop it again.
In terms of their representation, they should be represented in a very positive way. And there's no system for that in college athletics right now.
It seems like, Coach, everybody on this desk, everybody probably watching, I think we've all gotten to the point where we realize.
All right, so pausing it real quick because Saban finished his thought talking about the agents and saying that, well, some of them don't really know what they're doing, which is true. That is very, very, very true. And I think that something probably does need to be done about that. We could probably come together and have some type of a certification that you need to have to be an agent on this level for high school players, for college players, at least so people understand the languages or the language in contracts. That would be good. It doesn't mean that the agents are going to be good agents because I think it takes time to really learn how to do something like that. It's not just about knowing the language. It's about several other things, obviously, as well. But I think that would be a really, really good start to at least have something that's a little bit more, like concrete for all these agents so that, they're not putting these kids in really, really bad spots. So let's listen to what Kirk Herbstreit has to say. He just started to say that he feels like everyone up there knows that the players should be getting paid at this point. Like I said, most of these people, whenever it first started, they were very against players getting paid.
Players deserve NIL money.
No doubt.
Bryce Young is here and he makes a name for himself. He can go out and create some revenue, more power to him. But it's the collectives and it's the bribing of players to come to a school and the third parties that come in. The concern.
So you also have to listen to the language that they're using whenever they're talking about this stuff. So Kirk calls it bribing, right? And also I find it very funny to say, well, again, just like Saban said, well, it's okay if they've got a big name and they can make some money. But what about all the money that they're making from playing the sport? All the money that they're making these institutions? You mean to tell me that they don't deserve a piece of that? That's crazy as hell. Like that doesn't make any sense to me. But calling it bribing, just because the players are now getting paid. Well, is it bribing or was it bribing when players come up on these visits and you're going to take them through and say, hey, we've got the major that you want. We've got the people that are already in this field. They're high up. So you can network with them. They're going to make sure that you're straight once you graduate. They're going to get you a really good job. Whenever you talk about, hey, man, we've got this nice stadium. We've got a really nice weight room, or we've got some really nice dorms. You know what I'm saying? Like we've got this nice strip. It's got bars and clubs and things for you to go and hang out at and all that. Was that bribing? No, like that's not even what bribing means. Bribing is whenever you are giving a benefit to someone to do something that is, like that's not ethical. That's what bribing is. These kids are still going to go to college. Everything's going to be the exact same, except now they can choose to go to a place because this is a free market that's paying them more money. And if you don't like that fact, we're about to get to what the answer to it is here in just a minute. It's a very simple fix, but you're seeing again. Most of these people start off, the players shouldn't get paid. Now they're starting to open up. Well, the players have to get paid. So, okay, but it shouldn't be this way. Let's try to, put all these limitations on it. They've got to stop trying to hold on to that rope, let it go. And once they let it go, we can go straight to what the actual, fix is for this. And it's not going to be any more issues for us as fans, for the players, for the coaches, the people that really have to deal with this stuff, and not so much, these talking heads that we see on TV.
The question I have for you, we don't have a CBA, collective bargaining agreement. If we could, somebody's got to represent the players. Somebody's got to represent college football. We don't have one commissioner. We've got several.
All right, so pause it right there. So he talks about a CBA, right? That's the answer. You have to have a CBA. The only way that you can have one, as far as I know, is if the players are employees. Like, you've got to employ the players, because see, once you make that CBA, the players can sit down with the coaches and whoever else. They can all sit down. They can come to terms, and then from there you sign off on it. Now everything's binding. So if you want to set a transfer portal limit, that's binding now because you signed a contract. Because you work for these institutions. If you want to set a salary cap with the NIL, with the revenue sharing, with all of that, now you can actually do it. You know what I'm saying? But until, all right, and actually, I don't even know if you could ever do it with the NIL portion of it. But maybe if there is a CBA, maybe you can. I don't know. Either way, that's the only way. Like, you have to have a real contract. You have to sign off on a CBA. Once you do that, then everything gets cleaned up. But they still don't want to have that happen. So we're going to let this thing finish up.
Conference commissioners. We have no guidelines. We have no player contracts. There's third-party negotiators getting involved that are not always out for the players' best interests and aren't always communicating things that are real. It's on a collision course for chaos. How do we fix this before it's too late?
Well, I actually think there needs to be some kind of federal legislation. Right now we have, every state has a different law about how you can manage, your college program.
Yeah.
But it's interstate, so it should be a national, program. And we have to have some kind of protection from litigation. I don't really think players should be employees, although I do think they should receive revenue for their efforts in playing. But I also think that we have to have a system that still emphasizes education. When these guys transfer, they have about a 20% less chance of graduating.
Okay. All right. So had to stop it there. So Saban sits up here and he says he thinks that there should be a federal, like, national law. And it's not different state to state, because right now, yes, the laws are different state to state. So listening to what he said, okay, he doesn't like the NIL pay for play thing. We talked about how that's unconstitutional. That's going to violate antitrust laws. And if you try to go and get Congress to pass this law, that is going to violate antitrust. So while it might last, if it does get passed, while that might last for the next 3.5 years, after that, it's just going to get changed again. It's going to get changed and it's going to have to get fixed. So why not just get it fixed right now? And he also, talks about, he doesn't think that the players should be employed by the institutions. We just talked about that is the only legal way to fix this. Everything else, nothing else is legal. That's the only legal way. So we can already see why this is going to be a big mess. At least for me, I can see that it's going to be a huge mess. It's going to be a major problem. We're going to see a bunch of lawsuits, right? Like, I think that once the SEC, once the Big Ten, once the conferences actually start to get these lawsuits, they come, they get the paperwork that comes to their desk. That's when they'll say, "Oh, hell no! Like, we gotta do the right thing now." Because for whatever reason, I think that the main reason that they don't want to have a CBA is because they know that the players are probably going to be asking for more money than what they're getting now. Because we're talking about, with this rev sharing, 20% of the revenue is what the players are going to get paid, but that's capped at only $20.5 million. So that's not really 20%. Like we talked about, Tennessee, made $200 plus million last season. Well, if they make that much this year, if the players are only going to be able to split up $20 million, that's only 10%. So 20% would actually be $40 million. So that's not legal either. Like, I don't even know how that's standing up right now. But at some point, everything that we're talking about, if they don't get it fixed the correct way, someone's going to stand up and they're going to challenge it and they're going to win in court. So listening to what Saban is saying, at this point, everything that he was thinking was totally wrong. It was ass backwards. It's not going to hold up in court. Again, if it does, it's only going to be for a short period of time. And then we're going to have to start over. It's going to be a bunch of lawsuits. And that's when college football, college sports will be in some real trouble. Once we have all these lawsuits to keep on piling up and we're suing these conferences, that's when, we could see a big step back. So it's not the NIL is going to ruin it. It's the people who are higher ups that are holding on to it and won't let the change happen. That's what's going to ruin it. That's what's going to stop it. That's what could stop it.
And we've got guys transferring 3 or 4 times.
last thing too is that he was saying that he feels like he said that he wants to have something where players can't sue. You know what I'm saying? So that is illegal as hell. So basically, what he's saying is, look, I want to be able to rob these folks and keep them from pressing charges on me. That's exactly what he's saying. Some of the stuff that he's saying, he needs to maybe get some good lawyers with him, okay? And maybe they've gotten it fixed since then. Maybe he's not wording things the way that he's wording it now. But this is criminal stuff that he's talking about. Like you could press charges and he could actually do time for some of the stuff that he's talking about getting done. These are criminal acts. This is not legal. So I'm gonna let him finish. He's talking about the transfer portal. He's talking about how players that transfer are 20% less likely to actually graduate, which graduation is a big deal, but it's not for everybody, right? Like if you find a better opportunity, then you might end up having a much better life. You can. It's not about what you know; it's about who you know. So I'm just saying, like, for them to use this guise of, hey, we're all about the education. We want the players to get educated. That they don't give a damn about that. I can promise you that because Nick Saban has cut players. He's cut players and they didn't have their scholarship, so they had to pay for their college out of pocket. And it wasn't because the players were necessarily bad people, it was because they couldn't play. They had to make more room on their roster. So it was cool then, but now that the players are getting paid, you're saying, oh no, I really care about their education and they shouldn't be getting paid like this. Crazy.
So we're going to have some really upsetting consequences of this down the road when we lose the fact that we're not graduating players and they're not creating value for the future.
You're doing great here on the TV thing. You ever want to be the commissioner of college football?
Just run it.
Can you want to just run this thing?
Yeah, and then we got Herb Street and Pat up there licking boots and shining shoes and everything else. But so that's kind of like where I'm at with it. You know what I'm saying? I gave my thoughts on it. I just think that honestly speaking, man, this is going to be a huge mess because we're getting close to getting it fixed. I actually think that in 2026, I think that the Big Ten and the SEC probably looking to try to break off some type of a way because I think that Sankey and them understand that at some point you got to do the right thing. Now I don't know if that's true or not. They might not want to do it just yet, but that's coming. I feel like this is only going to maybe this is probably only going to set us back, but it could possibly be so bad that it catapults us forward. And it's like, man, look, we're going to get Saban and his whole bunch of people that are only seeing things from one side out of there. We're going to get some people in here who are kind of like forward thinking and are okay with change, and that will let the change happen so that the sport can get fixed. Because the sooner that we get the real rules in place that's going to be what we go off of moving forward, the better that we can get at this stuff. The more comfortable that we can get with it, the more used to it we're going to get with it. And I think that once the players are actually on a payroll by the institutions, then college football, college sports, period, for us, is going to feel like how it used to feel, where, man, you know what your roster is going to look like. Because whenever the players sign, which is how I think it's going to end up looking, you're signing, I would say at least 2-year contracts, maybe 3-year contracts, right? Like it might be one of those situations where, hey, you're locked into this school for 3 years. And if you want to transfer after that, then you can. But that's the way that it needs to be, where you can build up the depth, where you know how much money you have to pay, what the salary cap is, you know what your budget is, and it's more of an even playing field. So that's where I would like to see things going moving forward. And we'll see if this is going to help college sports or if it's going to hurt. Like I said, I think that it's going to hurt, but I would love to hear y'all's thoughts down in the comment section. But that's going to be it for this video. Y'all, please do us a very big favor. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and we'll see y'all on the next one. Thanks. Peace. Thanks for watching, and please make sure to like and subscribe to the channel because that keeps us growing inside of the YouTube algorithm. And if you did like this video, here's another one that you might also enjoy. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We'll see you on the next one. Peace.